I will burn this planet down before I spend another minute living among these animals.
If you know who that was, you know what this episode is about. Every month, we talk about Invincible. We're rereading the comic this year. It's the 20th anniversary, and this is our 6th Invincible episode, which means we read volumes 11 and 12 of the comic. If you've listened to or watched the first 5 of these, we haven't really had like a flow of show for those. We do have one starting now, so we're gonna do. I'm sorry if you've like read the comics before. We didn't do enough like deep dives into things. I don't know. We've done a lot of story recapping. We're guilty of just recapping story. We're not gonna do that this time. Well, we are. We are, but we've got a new format for when we read something like this to talk about it. So we'll do a quick recap of the main story beats, volumes 11 and 12, and then we'll talk about things we liked, things we didn't like, and maybe we have any hot or controversial takes. We'll talk about those too. Matt, before I jump into like what should only be a 5 to 10 minute story recap, I have done a lot of talking, all the talking. Anything you want to say?
No, not really. I just want to get to our thoughts, and I want to hear your, positives, negatives, good, bad, or indifference. I was pretty fired up reading this, so I just want to get to that.
Yeah, you heard the man. He said, "Shut up and get to the story." So that's what we're about to do. This is your last chance. If you do not want the Invincible comic book spoiled, now is the time to leave. Turn the episode off because there are major, major, major spoilers for the comic. I'm also very amped up about some of the topics. There's some good stuff in here. So we're 2 minutes in. Without further ado, let me get to the recap of volumes 11 and 12. Buckle up, because here we go. So volume 11 started great. We get a time travel story where Mark gets taken to the future to kill Immortal, who is essentially a tyrant in the future. There's a lot of cool stuff that happens in that issue, with the reasons why Immortal is even in power, and some cool little time travel things that I know Matt doesn't particularly enjoy. There's also a Mark and Eve date that gets interrupted for this story to take place. There's a really kind of cute retrospective montage of the Mark and Eve story, because they get to have their date after Mark goes and fixes things in the future. I thought that entire issue is extremely well written. It's an A+. Moving on from that, we get an Alan focused issue where he and Nolan get much, much closer. The Viltrumites try to execute Alan multiple times, and like they fail every time. They're actually really hilarious attempted executions. We also get more Battle Beast. And we also find out that there's more than likely less than 50 pure-blooded Viltrumites left in the world. And at the end of this, Mark also loses his virginity. Good for you, Mark. Couldn't be happier for you. Mark and Oliver also catch one of those spy orbs. If you remember from the last episode, and in volumes 9 and 10, there are these little spy orbs that they found were watching them. So they catch one of those, and they're trying to figure out who's monitoring what's going on with those two, and the family, and they really can't figure it out. There's also a really difficult side story with Amber, where she gets hit by her boyfriend and she asks Mark for help. Was that also really, really well written, but also really difficult to read and look at. Mark also fights the Guardians of the Globe, and he beats them relatively easily, and even makes a comment that he was holding back in the fight. In fact, he finally finishes them by grabbing Immortal by the head, swinging him around, throwing him at the Guardians, and knocking them all out. The takeaway here is that Mark is getting much, much, much stronger. He's really coming into his own and his powers in volumes 11 and 12. We also get a glimpse into what Angstrom Levy has been doing. We know that he is spying on Mark Oliver and his family. Mark and Oliver don't, but Levy starts assembling an army of Invincibles from other dimensions It's not going to end well, but it's pretty crazy, and it's coming soon. We also get the startup of Invincible Incorporated, thanks to Eve. Without working for Cecil anymore, there's just Mark going on crime patrols, and he's not really a fan of it because he's losing a lot of his free time. They also want to move in together, so Eve takes it upon herself to go set up with like a prison and a couple power plants, like higher at-risk facilities, and just says, "Hey, if you're in need, call this special phone number, and Mark will come and take care of things." Well, Invincible, not Mark, and they get paid to do this, so that's sort of their scheme to make some money and be able to move in together. And then to round out Volume 11, we get a weird one-off story. There's actually a lot of sort of weird one-off stuff that happens in Volume 11, but this is with a character called Powerplex. The TLDR on this guy, his sister was killed during the Omni-Man Invincible fight way back in like Volume 2, and he wants to get revenge. So he tricks Invincible into coming to fight him by using his girlfriend and son as bait. And a fight ensues. Mark figures out how to beat this dude. He absorbs energy and kinetic energy, so you just have to hold him in place and don't touch him, don't hit him, don't do anything to him, and he powers down. But before Mark figures this out, Powerplex unleashes a very large surge of power and accidentally kills his girlfriend, or I don't know if it's wife, I'm assuming girlfriend, and son. And then, of course, blames Mark for that as well. We'll see Powerplex again later, but that's sort of how Volume 11 ends. Volume 12, however, oh boy, this is you just pin your ears back because this whole trade goes at 150 miles per hour. It is relentless in its pacing and in the crazy stuff that happens. And this is really, Volume 12 is one of the best volumes of this entire comic book. It is quintessential Invincible action and quintessential Ryan Ottley art. I know we're going to talk about it more later, but let me get to what happens. So Volume 12 starts with Angstrom Levy unleashing this army of Invincibles that he's gathered onto the Earth. They attack Earth all over the globe, trying to take over major cities. It's absolute bedlam. Every hero on Earth is a part of the fight. They eventually win, but it is at a major, major cost. Darkwing dies. Rexplode dies. Eve ends up in a coma. Angstrom Levy escapes through a portal. He actually goes back to a dimension to like some scientists or doctors that fixed Angstrom after Mark thought he killed him the first time. And they basically say, hey, we gave you a chance to do what you want to do, but now you work for us. That's a bit of an ill omen. Angstrom Levy will be back, albeit without his right arm. Right, I think it was elbow down, wrist down.
Yeah.
Maybe it was his left. I don't remember. He loses part of his arm in the portal. Mark is also forced to set aside his differences with Cecil and kind of work together on the cleanup effort. So, bit of a mature move for Mark. It's the right thing to do for the planet. And like every city is decimated. Like every major city, Paris, London, New York, Tokyo, like every major
Moscow.
City in the world has been leveled. Yeah, they're all gone basically. Tons and tons of people are dead. Rubble everywhere. They're still digging out dead bodies. All the heroes on Earth are trying to help out to clean up. We also find out at the end of, I don't remember which issue it is in Volume 12, but Cecil is having D.A. Sinclair make Reanimen out of the dead Invincibles from the other dimensions.
Issue
Once
62,
again,
Dave.
Thank you. The second half of Volume 12, one of maybe my favorite antagonist in the comic. His name is Conquest. He is an old Viltrumite. This man is jacked out of his mind. He looks like Bane when he's amped up on Venom, but there is no drugs helping this man look the way that he looks. His physique is just pure Viltrum badassness.
One eye.
He has one eye. He's got a big scar on his face. Yeah, Conquest is incredible. He basically shows up and says, hey, I'm here to take over Earth. You're the Viltrumite in charge of doing so. If you haven't done any steps to do that yet, I'm going to assume you're just not. I'm going to fucking kill you. And I'm going to kill everyone else. This planet is going to be under my control. That's what I'm here to do. And this is said, just make it happen. he shows up while they're pulling dead bodies out of rubble. Mark feels very responsible. He's super angry because he's feeling a lot of guilt and shame. A lot of people on Earth think that Mark was helping do this because the villains in the Invincible invasion were all versions of him. People don't know any better. So Mark is just in a bad way. And he actually thanks Conquest and is like, hey, man, I'm so mad. I really needed to unleash. This is fantastic timing for you. And Conquest wants the same thing. He just loves to be bathed in the blood of his enemies. I think that's a direct quote, actually. This fight is absolutely brutal. Mark is beat so badly. It's broken bones. It's blood everywhere. He's beaten on Conquest. Conquest is beaten on him. They're flying all over the earth. Like, they move so fast. It's even hard to keep up with, as far as like news outlets. Even Cecil's having a hard time tracking where this fight is going. I'm only going to hit sort of the broad strokes because this fight lasted like 3 issues.
Yeah.
But Mark is beaten almost to within an inch of his life. By the end of the fight, his left arm is shattered and bone is sticking out. His knee is shattered and bone is sticking out. Oliver tries to help, and Conquest rips his right arm out of the socket, punches him in the face, and breaks a bunch of his teeth, and basically almost kills Oliver. Eve wakes up. She is in a coma after the fight with all of the different Invincibles from other dimensions. She wakes up from her coma, goes to help Mark, dies. Conquest punches her in the face once, and then literally shoves his whole hand and arm through her stomach and chest, and she dies. Eventually, Mark does beat Conquest, surprisingly enough, with Eve's help, because she resurrects herself somehow. More on that later. There's one final issue in Volume 12. It's sort of an epilogue to that Conquest fight. We see Rex's funeral. It's a nice bow on the Rex story. He was a pretty shitty dude at the start of this comic, and he's really kind of turned into a pretty responsible, nice guy. It's kind of a shame that he died, but that's also sort of a Kirkman thing. He makes you like someone and then kills them. We find out Eve's powers are broken. They're just not working. Like, she tries to take Mark's costume off, and it's like melting. There's flowers growing out of it, and it's like rainbow ooze on the floor. So we'll find out more about that in the next couple of trades, I'm sure. Cecil shows Mark Conquest's body because Mark wants to make sure that he's dead. Unfortunately, in classic Cecil actions, the body is a fake. Cecil has kept Conquest alive. He is imprisoned like miles below the earth in so many tons of concrete. Only his head is out. Conquest will likely return. We don't know when, but he is not dead. We find out the Sequids are making a return at some point. And at the end of this trade, in the last sort of major story beat that is worth noting, Mark tells Oliver that Oliver was right, and it is now time to start killing his enemies, because the events of this last trade, Volume 12, too much. Mark feels responsible for all the death and destruction because he didn't kill Angsham Levy when he had the chance. So that's where it ends. Potentially, Mark is going to move into a bit of a darker arc coming up.
Bravo. That was a fantastic recap.
Thank you. I took good notes.
You did. I like that it ended that last part, that last panel where he's like, I'm going to kill.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Grimes Grayson, man. He's on that Rick Grimes path. like that panel reminded me, like, we're going to kill them all. Like, I was like, dude, just like Kirkman using his Walking Dead characters as well, too. But, yeah.
So I want to start our discussion with the good things that happened. What did we like the most about these two volumes? I want you to go first because I've been talking now for like 15 minutes. Yeah. I'm sick of hearing myself talk.
I mean, I don't have a whole heck of a lot, but honestly, like this trade of Invincible, this hardcover, I am so happy I have this. I will be reading this multiple times because I have been waiting to get to Conquest. Conquest is like one of my favorite villains. I mean, he is a sadistic son of a bitch, but I just love that character. Otley drawing that character is fantastic. I don't know why. Sorry, listeners, but YouTube audience, I had 2 copies of this actual comic book cover, and this was hanging on my wall for some reason. Like, I just was super into this whole Conquest arc, and like you said, I do not remember it going that fast. Like, it went. I guess I was reading it monthly at this point. Like, you had got me on the got me on the wagon, so I was reading monthly. But like, this was like bam, 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 like this time reading it. So that was, I loved Conquest. I did like the ending with Mark not being Mr. Nice Guy anymore. I did note that was something that I thought was interesting. He's a relatively principled character, and I like that. But him coming to the realization, like, especially with Angstrom Levy bringing all these different clones of himself, the things he's gone through with his fathers, the impending Viltrumite invasion that is going to come you will assume will come at some point. Like, I also don't remember with Conquest, like, the cleanup effort, and then it was just like page turn, and Conquest was here. And I was just like shocked. I was like, oh no, like, I didn't download like any issues ahead of time, so I didn't really know what the contents of this was. So I was shocked. Like, we're 60 issues in, so we're a decent chunk
5 years.
We're 5 years into the series, but I'm like, whoa, this is like kind of sooner than I thought, but we are 5 years in.
I mean, we're half done. There's only 25 trade paperbacks. So.
It makes me so sad that we're half done.
I know.
I actually liked the Powerplex character. I do not remember that character at all. That little one-off issue, the last issue was issue 59 of that last trade.
Yeah.
He definitely had like a Batman versus Superman origin story a little bit with like his sister dying and like he wants to get revenge. Like, that's what I thought of.
I wonder if his mom's name is Martha.
Yeah, if all Mark had to say was Martha and he would have stopped. But like, I like that it was kind of a nice little one-off story. We know Powerplex is going to come back, but like, I like that they gave his origin. He had the upper hand on Mark, but his revenge and slight hubris caused him to kill his wife or girlfriend and, son. Like, I like that. It was just like a nice little one-shot issue. I like those kind of deals. So,
well, you remember he came back in volume 12.
He does. He comes back in 12.
That was actually, I thought that was really funny interaction. Because
I just remember Titan just beats him up, right? Like, Titan just beats him up.
Mark showed that wasn't Titan. That was Bad Rock.
Bad Rock. Okay. Titan's
that's
the
a dude from
guy.
Youngblood.
Oh, okay. Yep. See, yeah.
But when Mark shows up to help and Powerplex loses his mind, and attacks.
Yeah.
Cecil looks at like one of the the government dudes and is like, why'd you let him here? And he's like, man, I don't know everybody. Yeah. I thought he was helping. I thought he was a good guy. Like, what do you want me to do?
That's just like good chuckle. Kirkman, right? Like, that's just like,
yeah.
That's why we love Kirkman. It's just like, I could absolutely see someone be like, I don't know. Why'd you let this man in here? I
didn't know. Man. He was helping, so I let him stay. Like, we need all the help we can get. But yeah, Bad Rock was the one that ultimately took him down. Yeah. I loved that we got Youngblood. Like, there was a lot of Image guest stars. You got Youngblood. You got Pitt.
Spawn.
I don't know if you knew who Pitt is. You got Spawn, Cyberforce, Savage Dragon,
Tech Jacket, Wolfman. Yeah, like
Tech Deck. You mean Tech Jacket?
I said Tech Jacket.
I think he said Tech Deck.
No, Tech Deck are those little
skateboards. Yeah.
Tech 9 is a rapper. No, Tech Jacket.
Yeah. Okay.
No, but the Angstrom Levy invasion. Remember we were talking about the other invasion very previous, like that. Like in one of the previous volumes, we talked about invasion. I thought the Angstrom thing was kind of abrupt. Like,
yes,
we knew it was coming, but it was like issue 12. Like, we go from who are we talking about? Powerplex to like next issue, like everything is blown up in the world and it's on and cooking. Like it's
Yeah.
unpopular right now, but action packed. I loved Volume 12. I liked 11. Volume 12 was incredible though. That can be read at any time. It's just
Yes.
good stuff.
So some of my favorite things, my list of the good from volumes 11 and 12 in general, just overarching Mark and Eve's relationship. This is where I know I mentioned like Mark loses virginity in volume 12, and it was kind of like a haha moment. But
It's been building.
this volume 11 and 12, you really start to see their relationship blossoming. And there are so many, like, there are a lot of really tender moments. But there's also just so much of, I don't know, man, like Kirkman just writes them the way that I think Peter Parker and Mary Jane would be if Mary Jane also had superpowers and was a hero.
That's a good point. That's really
They just have it's such a great relationship to read. Um, like starting with the very first issue of volume 11 with their little date, the stuff that Eve does, to help with setting up Invincible Incorporated. She just sort of takes it upon herself to like,
yep. She's not a
make
bystander.
progress in the relationship. You know what I mean? When the stuff with Amber happened, Mark and Eve were together when Amber called, and then Mark was like, "Hey, I gotta go. I can't tell you about it, but like, I'll tell you when I get back." And then when he comes back and tells her what happened, she's understanding. They have like a really good conversation about it. The way that she, is still, she's got casts on when she wakes up from that coma, and she still goes and puts her life on the line, to help him with conquest, even though ultimately it ends to her, getting killed for at least one issue. I remember reading that issue for the first time when that happened. I was beside myself, having to wait another month to find out that Eve was not dead. I could have driven to Robert Kirkman's house and slapped him in the face. I was so mad. Rob. Why would you do that? I was happy when he brought her back, though. And even in the last issue, after Rex's funeral, Eve tries to speak at the funeral and just can't get any words out. She's too sad. She kind of runs away. And then Mark goes and finds her, and she's talking about, how she feels about Rex and like how he was her first everything. And she feels guilty for even feeling that way, and like talking to Mark about it. And they have like a really raw moment where he's just sort of, he smiles and just says that he loves her, and he wants to support her. And it's just, you don't get that kind of stuff in superhero comics.
No.
You can get that type of really well-written relationships in indie comics about love and relationships and sex. That stuff exists, and it's out there if you want to go and find it. But to get that layered into a superhero comic is so rare and beautiful. I can't get over how great that is. And I'm so glad that we still have another, 12, 13 trades of this to read, because I remember a lot of the stuff that happens with Mark and Eve in the future that we haven't gotten to yet, and there's just so much stuff we can talk about. I glossed over it, but oh, good. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, like, I think we just like them so much because they're like the definition of like a complementary relationship. Like, not just like when they're outside of the costumes, but even in the costumes. Like, I definitely picked up that without Eve, Mark wasn't beating Conquest. Eve jolted that man and like roasted him, and that's when Mark got the upper hand. Like, so if there's no Eve, it would have been pretty dicey, and he probably wouldn't have made it. We don't know. So
yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. That's a
sorry
good point.
To interject.
No, please don't be sorry. That's great. I want that. I want you to say those things.
I know how much you love Eve, so and I do too.
I do. I also I love Mark too. So I love both of them.
We love Conquest too.
I did mention it briefly, but we got a Battle Beast return in Volume 11. He just freaking went ham on some Viltrumites. It was awesome. Anytime I get a bloody Battle Beast fight, I'm stoked on it. So I was happy to get that. And really, that's sort of another one of my things that I loved about these two trades was we finally got a really strong dose of Otley gore. And it doesn't, if you don't read the comic or you haven't read the comic, even the show, I don't think really does it justice. There's no way to accurately say how stark and in contrast to everything else in the comic the gore is. unless you read Invincible and see for yourself, because the art is so well drawn and it's so bright and saturated colors and it's so slickly done. And then to layer on this really detailed horror comic like gore is incredibly unique, and it's one of the things that sets Invincible apart from any other superhero comic. Other superhero comics do blood and violence and gore. No one quite does it like Ryan Ottley and Robert Kirkman in Invincible. No one will ever convince me otherwise. This is the best at it. It always has been, and it always will be. I also didn't mention it in my Story Beats recap. However, we got a crossover with the Astounding Wolfman, who is such an underrated Kirkman character. His comic went like 24, 25 issues, and he was even in the Guardians of the Globe for some time as an active member. Dude, Astounding Wolfman's awesome. He is an awesome character. If you haven't read Astounding Wolfman, you can buy, it's in one collected volume. You can get all 24 or 25 issues in one volume. Seek it out and read it. It's awesome. It's like Universal Monsters meets superheroes. Super cool. It's like vampires and werewolves, but superheroes. That sounds dumb, I understand, but it's awesome. You got to just take my word for it. Another one of the things that I know, Matt, you've already said it. I've already echoed it. I'm just going to say it again. Conquest, the Conquest fight, literally everything about Conquest, incredible. I would have read a Conquest miniseries had they given me one at the time. And then my last sort of high note, good thing that happened in these two trades, which should come as no surprise if you've been listening to these Invincible episodes that we've been doing. Oliver almost dying, A+, should have gone all the way. Kid sucks.
Getting punched out.
Dude got rocked and then got his arm almost ripped off.
He did get rocked.
Then Conquest was literally holding him above his head, like pulling from. He had like his ankles in one hand and his wrist in the other. He was just pulling him. He's like, "I'm going to rip you in half." And here's how it's going to feel. First, you're going to feel your vertebrae start to separate. Then you're going to start to feel things separating on the inside and tearing. Then you're going to start to feel your skin stretch to the point where it's about to rip. It's going to be delicious. And I was like, yes.
You're here for it.
Then we saved Oliver, of course. Again, this is exclusively about Kid Oliver. When he grows up a little bit, I'm on board. But for right now, maybe they kill Oliver and the whole comic is different in the future. I don't know. But that was it for all of my high points. I have a few things that I didn't like. I have 3, as a matter of fact. But I'll let you go first. Unless you don't have any, in which case I'll just
I'm not going to really be. I'm not really. I don't be a homer, but I really enjoyed this. These are minor nits, man. Like first,
so are mine.
The first trade 11 was just. It was more of that. We came down from a high with all the Angstrom Levy stuff previously in the previous arc. And it was just more of those like kind of really one-off issues. Like I like a good one-off, but I do like an arc. And we were definitely building towards stuff, but it was like 2 issues. It was like a jumping on point issue for people to jump on, which did explain, the Eve relationship. And I get that, but it's like, I already know this stuff. Like I've been reading since, Ground Zero, but you want to bring those new readers in. I get that. Then there's like a Wolfman crossover in there. Like then there's just this random Powerplex issue in there. And I can't critique Kirkman too hard because even with those kind of issues and in a modern superhero comic book, those one-off issues would never be referenced. Kirkman does reference the stuff that he does in these one-off issues, but it's just, for me, it was just hard after reading that, which I enjoyed. I enjoyed all of it, but then you go to Conquest, and it's like, you go to this Angstrom Levy war and this Conquest stuff, and it's like so epic. It's like, if these other beats were in a normal superhero comic, you'd be like, oh, this is the greatest stuff ever. But when it's Otley and Kirkman, you're like, this is like, we're our foot's off the gas a little bit. I
disagree with a lot of that.
Good. All right, good.
With a lot of it, because if you don't have stuff that isn't epic, the really grandiose, epic stuff that happens isn't going to feel as big or epic because everything is. you've got to have peaks and valleys because otherwise you're just in Texas on flat plains. And trust me, nobody likes that. And I don't necessarily think that the beginning of Volume 11 was a jumping on point just because it has that Mark and Eve montage stuff at the second half of the book. There's a lot of times, and Robert and Ryan have talked about this before, but Ryan especially, they do a lot of homage to old Marvel stuff in this comic, and it's not always super obvious that they're doing it. But if you read older Marvel, they do a lot of stuff. They've done multiple wedding issues where they just celebrate a relationship. They did it with Cyclops and Jean Grey. They did a Peter and Mary Jane wedding issue. They did a Reed and Sue Richards wedding issue. Marvel does like to do these sort of like lovey, bubbly, hokey kind of celebrate the love and relationship of our characters. And I do feel that the Mark and Eve stuff in that first issue was really just like a callback to some of the stuff Marvel used to do in those cases.
Okay,
I don't think it was necessarily a jumping on point.
You corrected yourself at the end. Marvel did do things like that. Not they used to do things like that.
Marvel doesn't care anymore. But.
Exactly. Yeah. My other dislike, it's not anything. It was an excellent story and well done, but that stuff with Amber was really tough to read.
Yeah. Yes.
But not like a dislike. I hate it. Like it served its purpose. It was move the characters forward. But that was very tough to read. So I'll leave it at that.
My bad was 3 very quick things. I already said I think I've said all of them in some capacity. So this is more of a recap. Powerplex. I didn't dig the Powerplex issue. I just don't love the dude.
Martha!
Like What's his name? It was a cool throwback to the Omni-Man Invincible fight, and I think taking down that path is interesting because this again is a comic where Robert Kirkman does touch on real world stuff. This is a real thing that would happen when these superhero fights occur, that you don't really get these types of ramifications in Marvel or DC stuff. This is, really something you only find in independent comics like this. So I liked the idea of it. I don't know, man. I just don't love Powerplex.
He's a straightforward revenge character. I mean, it's kind of like lame.
But he's kind of goofy too. You know what I mean? He doesn't pose a real threat. The way to stop him is just to hold him in place, and then he runs out of power. He's kind of a joke. I don't know. It's just a personal preference thing. Similar to the fact that I don't like the Reanimen, and that's another one of my negatives. I think the Reanimen are lame. I think turning Dead Invincibles into Reanimen.
A lot of that.
It's a natural progression for Cecil and D.A. Sinclair to do that. I'm just sick of the Reanimen, man.
I'm like, Cecil,
sick of them.
Can we just let it go? Can we just let this go? Once they're they do the white room trick again, and gosh, I'm like, come on, guys, let it go.
I know. Go into the well, man. Go into the well in the Reanimen. And my last bad thing from these trades, it's a callback to my list of good things, but the bad thing is that Oliver didn't die. It was great that he almost died, but it sucked that he didn't. It's a cheat. I know I'm cheating a little bit by adding that to both lists, but it is what it is, man. Deal with it.
If I ever meet like Ryan Otley at a convention, I don't care how much money it's going to cost me. I'm going to want a brutal Oliver thing so I can gift it to you. I like Conquest, just great. Brutalizing Oliver so I can give it to you on your birthday or something like that.
I'd love that.
Merry Christmas.
Unfortunately,
I don't know.
I think Otley's commission price is probably not worth the joke.
Well, I'm gonna have to put my house up, whatever. To sell some stuff, we'll get there.
I do have a few controversial.
Yeah, I'm curious. What's controversial?
Hot takes. Do you have any of those, or is this just me wrapping it?
This is you. You're wrapping it.
All right. So hot. They're probably not hot takes. I think they're more lukewarm. And they're just controversial Dave type opinions. It is what it is. You already said one of them. I'm actually in agreement with you. Volume 11 was kind of all over the place. It was a lot of one-offs and setups. Typically, I think that's okay. But the way it could have just been the way that this released monthly, it wasn't as jarring, but reading it in trade like that, it really did feel a little jarring. You could say that's a bad thing. I take it as a controversial opinion because I
say, you
gush
just
about
roasted
Invincible
my
so
ass.
often.
You just roasted
I know.
my ass. All right, I got to
know.
re-bracket my things for next week. Got to recategorize.
I mean, I understand why it is the way that it. You do need those. You need the valleys to make the peaks feel higher.
I agree, man. My man just turned me to barbecue
I didn't
chicken.
love the execution. It's controversial to me. I didn't love the execution. I think people could think that's a controversial take. Also, the 5th issue of Volume 11, was that Cory Walker art? It couldn't have been Ryan Ottley art.
Was that
but it wasn't good.
Was that the Astounding Wolfman issue? Because that was not.
It might have been.
That's what it, because it was a different, it was like, that was the Wolfman issue. And it was not, that was definitely not Ottley. I was like, this is a step down.
And it was Cory. Cory. Because the only two people that have ever drawn Invincible Monthly are Cory Walker and Ryan Ottley. No one else has ever drawn that book.
Yep. Then it had to have been Cory. It looks like Cory Walker.
Sorry, Cory.
Said that.
I already.
Cory's good. I'll take Cory on any book now that I read, but like when you put him up against Ottley, like you said,
I know
you are not doing anyone justice when you put him up against Ottley, flexing his powers in this right now.
Yeah. I have one last. It's not really controversial. It's more of a lukewarm take and potentially just a conspiracy theory. Anything else you want to add to this conversation before I wrap this up?
No, man. I know you hate how I read comics digitally, but like this Conquest arc on a big ass monitor was glorious. Like it was epic. My man with the fist through the chest, like that was epic stuff. And that just when Conquest is explaining himself and that dialogue in his face is all bloody, it was like a movie. Like it was crazy. But yeah,
that's actually a wonderful segue into my last theory here. So during the Conquest fight, in the beginning of it, Conquest is goading Mark a lot of the time. He'll say something, Mark will attack, and then Conquest will smile or smirk, and he'll go, almost there. He says this multiple times. Almost there.
You're getting there.
Yeah. So I know Conquest said he was there to enslave Earth no matter what, do whatever it takes, enslave Earth. But you know what? Maybe he wasn't. Maybe this was part of the plan. And maybe Anissa and that other Viltrumite we saw after Anissa came down to see Mark the first time in our last episode, whose name we don't know yet, even though I know his name, I'm not going to say it. Maybe those two in Conquest, this was part of the plan to bring out Mark's true self. Show up, make him mad, kill some people he cares about, and just get him to break from his human half. Just pull out the Viltrumite self. I think there's a chance that Conquest was simply just sent there as a test.
Good. Very good.
There's no reason for there's no reason for Conquest to be goading him like that. Other than, I mean, you could take it at face value. Maybe he was just wanting to get Mark so mad that the fight would just get more brutal and more intense because Conquest just loves the art and brutality of combat. But also, maybe it was a little bit more than that. I don't know.
I'm gonna go with your more nuanced theory. I like that much more. I like that much better.
Okay, that's fair.
No, that's fair. Good. That's good stuff.
Well, there you have it. The new format of our Invincible reread discussions. If you like it, if you don't like it, let us know. You can take a survey at the end of the episodes if you listen on any podcast platform. I think it might just be Spotify, but I think any of them you can do the survey. If not, whatever, sorry. Or you can tweet at us. Our Twitter handles are in the description of the audio or video episode you are listening to or watching. We'll follow you back. We'll talk about comics. I actually tweeted a panel from the Conquest fight and just asked if anybody knew who was fighting because you couldn't see Mark or Conquest in the panel. I do fun stuff like that sometimes on Twitter. So come hang out with us on Twitter and we'll chat a little bit. And if you like what you see and hear and you want to interact with us more and you want to keep the podcast going, share with a friend, family member, coworker, somebody that you know that likes comics or superheroes or stuff like that. We'd greatly appreciate it because we like to keep doing the podcast. And the best way for us to stay motivated is to start growing. So help us grow the podcast, and that'll help us stick around for the long haul. So with that being said, we'll see y'all in a little bit. However, there is a change coming to the timing of the podcast. We are going to move to bi-weekly. So this episode will come out, and then it's going to be 2 weeks in between episodes. There's just a lot going on life-wise for Matt and I, and it's getting harder and harder to do a weekly podcast with what we feel is quality, compelling content. So the best thing for us to do to stay motivated and to make sure that the episodes are of a quality that we're proud of is to go to bi-weekly. So expect that after this episode, you'll get a 2-week break in between episodes. However, we will still release our monthly Invincible episode off cadence. So technically, you're going to get 3 episodes a month. We just don't know when the Invincible episodes are going to drop. Every other Monday, you get a regular episode, and then some point throughout each month, you get an Invincible episode. It'll be a nice little surprise, a little bit of a bonus. Hope you like surprises. Matt's speechless. You got nothing to say.
I love surprises.
Okay. Great. Matt loves surprises. All right. That's it, everybody. Remember, bi-weekly, share the podcast. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And until then, I'm Dave.
And I'm Matt.
Take care of yourselves, everybody.
Peace.